think I've always been pretty aware of what I'm good at and not good at, and not shied away from that. Aside from that, I don't think at any point I was, if I'm honest, was thinking, crikey, I need a business partner.
Okay.
I probably totally undervalued the impact that a business partner could have.
Welcome back to another episode of the Recruitment Mentors podcast. I'm your host, Hisham Azuz, and in this week's episode, I was joined by Abi Dunn. She's the founder of 68 People, and she runs a specialist hospitality recruitment business. And then entered the COVID madness, and your world is hospitality.
The bottom of the bottom.
Yeah, so it was, one of the most impacted industries. In 2020, their turnover was 122,000 and there's 5 people in the business. In 2021, that grew to 464,000 and 9 people. In 2022, that grew to just over 1 million and 14 people. And 2023, 1.7 with 24 people. And they're on track to break the 2 million mark. What I love about this story and the passion that Abi has is her entire commitment to delivering a client and candidate experience that is exceptional. She's one of the very few leaders that speaks about experience non-stop. One of their core KPIs within their business is Net Promoter Score. Their fill rate is extremely high and they want to make it even better. How do you uncover people that align with your values in the interview process?
Yeah, it's hard, and you kind of always think, God, how can we...
Enjoy this week's episode. Abi, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So we sat down in November 2020 when our conversation went out.
Yeah.
So by then you had a first full year in business because you started in 2019, and then entered the COVID madness, and your world is hospitality.
The bottom of the bottom.
Yeah. So it was, one of the most impacted industries. So I've always, outside looking in, I've always really found how you've approached things really interesting, on the branding front, the values, just how you've gone about your business. So what I was really keen to, have you back on the pod is, I think, safe to say you've really gone on this growth journey. I'm not just talking about headcount revenue. I think you've really evolved your business over the last 3 years. So I think today that's what we're going to be uncovering, because I think there's going to be a ton of learnings for current recruitment founders, aspiring recruitment founders, on some of the things that you've implemented, that you've learned, that you've executed, which I think a lot of people can learn from. Because I know you don't paint yourself with the brush of I'm a typical recruitment founder, you're a typical recruitment founder.
Well, I'll ask you that at the end, see what you think.
Okay, cool. So let's just give everyone some immediate context. So if I get any of this wrong,
yes,
just let me know, okay?
Yes.
So some of the key metrics. So 2019, turnover 305, there's 3 of you. 2020, 122, there was 5 of you. 2021, that increased to 464, and there was 9 people in the business, but 5 billers. 2022, just over 1 million, 1.76, 14 people in the business, 9 billers, and then 2023, 1.7 in turnover, 24 people in the business, 15 in billers, and the 2024 goal is to break the 2 million mark, which is really exciting. And you've put 24 and 15 again, so I'm assuming you're aiming to do that with the same amount of people currently. Yeah,
I think next year for us is, making the people that we've got on the team better focusing on training and development.
Love that. So one of the things that I was really interested in that you kindly shared with me was the core of your business is recruitment, but then you've got these other products called Class of 68. You've got international part of your business that's growing, and you've got consultancy. So consultancy is 5%, international 9%, Class 68 8%.
Yeah.
So keen to go into that, and then I guess the final bit of context, which I think would be useful for people, is and again, you can let me know if I'm wrong here, but I asked you what's Abi's role now, and I think this would be useful for context. So you have a business partner called Charlotte, which we're going to go into because that's been quite pivotal. And then, the couple of bullet points we put under yourself is you spend a lot of your time coaching, training the existing team, involved in marketing, the BD strategy, just strategically thinking about how you can keep moving forward as a business. And you're always thinking about how you can improve the candidate and client experience.
Yeah.
Yeah?
that's what I lose sleep over for sure.
Nice. All right, cool. So let's start with the £1 million question then. In your opinion, what are the characteristics and traits of a successful recruiter in today's market?
Well, there's a few, isn't there? I definitely think, look, if you can't prioritise your work effectively and you can't work at speed and have this kind of sense of urgency, recruitment's probably not for you. We've certainly found over the years that this emotional resilience to decisions that are made helps. You know, we probably a few years ago now, I was noticing people being, you know, pretty emotional about decisions that clients were making or candidates were making. It was like, we can't operate a business like this. So we brought into this kind of cause and effect principle that, you know, as long as a very self-reflective, I think we're a very self-reflective business, and I think that the consultants that do really well are the ones that are constantly saying, look, what could I have done differently? Or they get into a point of offer stage of saying, okay, I've done everything I can. I know I've done everything I can. I've referenced, my experience was great. I'm not putting square pegs into round holes. And at that point, if the decision doesn't go your way, you know, it's cool. I think this emotional roller coaster that we were on was a challenge at one point. So yeah, this definitely I don't think we have a blame culture around blaming consultants and candidates for decisions, and I think that can create a shitty culture. So from my point of view, that's a really good behavioural trait that we need to have. And I think, you know, we've got to be experts, and that's not always easy when you start in recruitment to be an expert. But to me, the expert isn't about telling. It's not about saying to a client, this is what I think. In actual fact, I think a lot of the time a client won't give a shit about your opinion. I think you've got to coach them, you've got to question them, and, you know, yeah, we can drop in our expertise, but actually, you know, we're talking to a lot of people directors and operations directors who've got significantly more experience in their field. So I think being influential and expert, but without being a knob, is a pretty good trait of a recruiter.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that emotional bit that you're talking about, because I think that can just help you in life.
Yeah.
Like not to be the first person to point the finger at other people.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful because you can't come across like you don't give a shit either. There's the other way around of, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter, and it does matter. But I think, yeah, it's pretty liberating to constantly be reflecting and thinking, what could I have done differently, rather than trying to manage other people's behaviours. I certainly, you know, I've found that for the last few years when I've kind of adopted this technique myself. No,
honestly, I love that so much. A quote that, whenever I talk about stuff like this, a quote that I always keep front of mind is, whoever you point the finger at, you give power to.
Yeah.
And I think, even in recruitment, if you're always pointing the finger at the client and candidate, it's going to be a pretty rough time.
Yeah, and how do you improve, right?
Exactly.
You can't... self-reflecting and thinking, what could I have done differently, gives you choice and power to do things differently. If you're constantly thinking, oh, well, what did they do wrong, you know, then you just stay at basic level.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So, couple of things that I just want to get straight into it with you, if that's okay. So, we did a podcast before, so for anyone listening, feel free to go back and listen to that. But we sort of spoke about the first year in business, then COVID happened. So I want to just go straight into a specific part of this timeline of this journey, which is Charlotte joining, basically.
Yeah.
So which was May 2021.
Yes.
Right? Because I find that really interesting, just because, you know, that year you had a solid year of turnover, and then you over doubled the turnover the year before, and then you've continued growing. So why don't we just start with what would be really interesting for you to share is, obviously you started this business on your own. What were some of the signs that kept showing up for you that made you feel like, fucking hell, if I really like the idea of bringing someone in, or if I just keep it myself, then I'm maybe not going to get to where I want to. I don't know, but what were some of the signs that made you to start think about someone like Charlotte joining your business and bringing them on the journey with you?
Well, I think I've always been pretty aware of what I'm good at and not good at, and not shied away from that. I don't really enjoy sitting in rooms analysing P&Ls. The team will be laughing. But, I know I've got strengths. But aside from that, I don't think at any point I was, if I'm honest, was thinking, crikey, I need a business partner.
Okay.
I probably totally undervalued the impact that a business partner could have. But Charlotte had been a friend for many years, and I knew her capability. And I suppose, being totally honest, I was like, oh, I bet it'll be really fun.
Really?
Yeah. I hope she doesn't mind me saying that. But I knew she'd be fucking great, obviously. But
what did you think would be fun about it?
We're really good mates, and we'd worked together before in a previous life in hospitality, and it didn't really enter my head any negative side of it. Maybe because I've had to put some ego stuff aside for sure during this journey. We're business partners now, and but the process, the benefits that it's brought in terms of the speed at which we can make decisions, how that having two different opinions and coming to a conclusion, just the level of so much more fun. It is fun. We had a strategy meeting yesterday, and we were both like super excited about it. And it's just two of us sat in a room for 9 hours. And I didn't know what I was missing. I didn't know that would be so cool.
Oh, I can relate to that. Like having a 9-hour strategy session on your own is fun with another person.
Yeah.
And even though you can actively share the things that are in your mind about your business and the journey you're on with your partner or your friends, it's not the same. Like even though they could maybe be really good listeners and go, oh, Abby, that's really interesting, like I understand, they don't. Yeah. Now you've got someone who's on, is in the boat with you, you're rowing in the same direction. And I totally get why that would be more fun. Like I get that. Yeah, being a
great.
solo founder.
It is that we share the same values, and that's super important. Would I advise people to go and find a business partner that they'd never worked with before? I don't know, but because we knew each other so well, and she's brilliant at certain things, and I think she would say the same about me. And that what I do think is important in that relationship is trust, and we trust each other. We trust each other to do the right thing for the business. I can't imagine how it would be if we didn't have that. I mean, it would be obviously really shit.
Yeah. So less interested in like the nitty gritty details, but I think people would be interested, maybe people that started their business on their own actually have maybe thought about the idea of bringing someone on if it is the right person or that. But the way that you set it up is over a period of time, Charlotte just basically owns more and more of the business. And obviously you would agree like X amount, but over time, as the business grows and length of service, her like share in the business grows, right?
Yeah. And from an experience background, Charlotte had not worked in recruitment before. She'd done recruitment, but her background was actually in hospitality in the niche that we work in. So having that experience, and she'd operated large businesses, so she brought a skill that I didn't have, and I think that's probably quite important to kind of think about what your weaknesses are and find someone that can do that.
What was the job spec?
I don't think I have a job spec.
No, but like what was like, because I think that'd be helpful. So like what ended up being, I'm sure it's evolved. I mean, you told me some of the things that fall under her remit, but like initially when you're bringing this person in, what are like the core things you're like, right, these are the things that you're going to be responsible for, going to be focusing on?
Charlotte comes to the party with more a kind of red energy than I have, so she gets shit done. Yeah. So, the kind of things like immediate changes that were made, like it sounds small, but a meeting cadence, for example. So now we do, well, since Charlotte's joined, we do, everybody in the business knows their meeting review schedule. Every meeting has got etiquette around it. So it's got an agenda, it's got a time scale, it's got action points, it's got minutes. And that's a game changer. Like that's because you get shit done. So operational processes.
Yeah.
I suppose I knew what best practice was, but I'd not written it down anywhere. It was in my head, And so there's been quite a lot of getting stuff out of my head to to into some kind of system or process, and I think she saw quite quickly that in order for the business to grow, I needed to come out of recruitment. Physically talking to candidates and having a billing target, for example, and that she made that possible by us having systems and procedures in place that we hadn't had before.
Why did she think that was important?
Because that ties you to, I think that limits growth. The stuff that I work on now with the team and from a more strategic business, I definitely spend a lot of time working on the business rather than in it, and I know that's really tough. That was what I always found tough, and I definitely found it tough. I found it tough maybe stepping away from clients or handing things over that I'd held the reins of for so long. But I can see now the beauty of doing that.
Okay. That is interesting that you go to something as like granular as like a meeting cadence.
I know, yeah, and that's huge. The other things, for example, with the team, they've got, regular reviews, a review document. I mean, KPIs for another one. I remember writing a blog, I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, about recruitment isn't a numbers game. And recruitment is a numbers game. I came out of quite a big agency and thought, hate the numbers, hate the number of calls. But actually, you can't improve anything unless you measure it. And as long as you measure the right things at the right time, because measurements create the culture. We talk, for example, a lot about fill rate. We talk a lot about NPS. So, and Charlotte's been able to see that from a different angle to me, and from a more operational, kind of generic, good business angle, as opposed to having years of being indoctrinated by other, recruitment practices. And so that's been really beneficial. And I think what we've seen over the last few years and what's supported growth is where we measure stuff, like what we measure. Like, for example, look, if we purely measure revenue, the behaviour that kicks out is sharkiness, right? We're just going to do what we can to get revenue. If we purely measure CV sends, I'm going to send as many as I can and the quality will be shit. So it's real consideration of where we accelerate and push on what we should measure and what that behaviour kicks out. We talk about that a lot.
Okay. Just before, I want to go into that, but just quickly, you sort of highlighted it, but there'll be a lot of people listening to this that manage a team, lead a team, run a business, and have meetings. I can relate to that as well. So the fact that you led with that, clearly you feel that's had a big impact. So I just want to make sure that for people listening, they can maybe consider implementing some of these things. So how did your meetings run before Charlotte joined? So you said the meeting cadence, you mentioned the weekly reviews, minutes. Just give us the granular things on like how they run before and how they run now with Charlotte involved, and why the net positive of that.
We'd have meetings. I'd probably, if I'm honest, it would be quite easy for me to move them, and now that never, that wouldn't happen, and I can see the benefit in that. But I think so. For example, we'd have meetings and we would maybe float around about subjects, and you can kind of become obsessed about a certain detail, and then the meeting runs over. Blah blah blah. You kind of bring in the whole team into meetings where that's unnecessary. Maybe that was linked to the size at the time. But certainly, Charlotte had come from an organisation that had a kind of cadences in place. So the changes that we made were, for example, now we meet with the leaders every Monday morning at 9:30. So that's the leaders' meeting. Then the leaders go into their meetings 10:30 till 11. Everybody's got there's an agenda, set agenda every week, same agenda. So whatever that might be, candidates at final. We talk about what's really important to the meeting is we open it with value highlights and highlights from the week before and kind of people that have exhibited our values, like value shout outs. So that's sets, Monday morning, I know some people disagree with early Monday morning meetings, but that sets a really nice tone for It's not just straight into numbers. We're really transparent with business revenue over the whole business. So there's a transparency there, although it's not so we talk about it a lot. We then, we're going to talk about areas of focus for everybody and candidates at final. That messaging then gets transcended into the next, the leaders going into their teams. Everybody, we do monthly reviews with the consultants and then quarterly reviews with the leaders. We do a biannual conference. And again, it links to cadence. We've got a set format for each thing. So we do mentoring sessions where some of the team have mentors within the business. But everybody knows that they've got this set number of times that we communicate as an office. We've got 2 offices, one in Manchester, one in London. So we communicate as an office, communicate on a one-to-one basis, and communicate as a company. And I think that brings a calmness, right? People know what's expected and what's happening.
I appreciate you sharing that. I find that super interesting because definitely guilty. I mean, there's 4 of us, but guilty of moving like one-on-ones and certain things. So there's but when what I've definitely found, because I've recently implemented a different meeting, which is like a specific meeting with sales, with marketing, with customer success, and like when meetings go well, you feel really good about them in terms of like when you feel they're productive. Yeah. So like I think there's so many meetings happening across just businesses in general, but recruitment businesses where people walk out of them and go, that was a fucking waste of time.
Yeah. We can't always stick to it, but I know I've got about 50 minutes of mental capacity when it comes to a meeting. And so I do struggle after that. And so I appreciate that other people must do as well. But I think that the bit that where you get shit done is the action points and saying who's going to do what by when. And they're reviewed, Charlotte and I, for example, will have a monthly board meeting and have action points from that, and they're reviewed when we come back in. So yeah, I do. I mean, it sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? Meeting cadence, but it's pretty big.
Been impactful, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to go into next then is how you've set up your business, because it is different.
Okay.
I would say in the. I'm
going to take that as a compliment.
The BD function, the talent consultants, like how you set that up. I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Was it? When did it evolve like that? Was it in 2021 it started like that?
I suppose when we set up, I'd always done the business development personally, and had the consultants. There was never. I knew when I went into another agency, the bit that I hated about the job was the cold calling part that people wanted you to do, and I didn't want to do it, and I just didn't have that in my life. I just didn't want to do it. So I was really appreciative that actually people that might join us, and if I'm selling this as a great opportunity for people to join and they suddenly landed with something that they don't want to do, I've never done before, we've got a slightly different model that we take on people from hospitality operations. So I was doing all the BD at first, and then as we grew, that became, that was unsustainable. But I always knew that if we got to a certain point, I would separate out that function. I knew that it was a different skill. I knew that the focus, I wanted the consultant's focus to be on client experience, existing client experience, and candidate experience. That's where I wanted them to spend their time, to love what they do. And so, yeah, we knew that business development function was unique and needed to be done by a different team. So currently we have 2 head of client success, they're called now. We've had a tweak there, but they will be responsible for taking new clients through a sales cadence, and then they do what we call discovery calls. So they, at that point, kind of diagnose the challenges of the business, find out how we can help, and then that will get passed on to either the recruitment team, the biggest part of the business, or if if it's a training need that they've got, we can pass that on to, we've got a training division, or if it's an international challenge that they need specific international talent, then it goes to that division. We're evolving it all the time. So we're now questioning as an organisation whether those 2 girls, both called, we've got 5 Abbies in the business.
Really?
Business,
5? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
So Abigail and Abby spelled differently to me. whether they're going to have some involvement in account management of bigger clients. And I think that's probably going to be the next step.
Because the way that you done it was they got a percentage of revenue for the first 6 months.
Yes. Yeah.
The client that they brought on.
Yeah.
I love this approach, by the way, because I just love the fact that even the fact that you've got discovery calls in there.
Yeah.
Like, so many recruiters don't have that step.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my world's training, and we've done a bunch of training stuff on this, and a lot of people don't do that. Because what I really love, what you just mentioned there, is they're trying to diagnose problems.
Yeah.
Right? And
it feels better to do that.
Yeah, but also it's giving you, it's enabling you to have an opportunity to truly understand what their problems are, so you can, you know, offer the best solution. Right?
Yeah, and we've got to, from day dot, we've got to come across like we're experts. And if we start talking about vacancies and roles, what jobs you got, you know, it's transactional and we'll be treated like shit. You know, and when we've not had a great client relationship, it's because, you know, reflecting, it's because I've gone in as some kind of subservient, yes sir, no sir, but you know, we'll do anything, we'll work on whatever jobs you want, and now I have a totally different attitude to that.
Yeah, honestly, I love it. I think this is one step in the process that if recruiters were supported in effectively implementing this, it would have a big impact.
100%.
Like a soundbite I've said multiple times on here, and she always dropped me a note saying thanks for mentioning me on the pod, but I think it sums it up perfectly. So we had a girl. She was on the panel of our Manchester event, Amber Penrose, right?
I watched it. She was fab.
Yeah. So she did a training session with us. And what I always remember saying is, what made her go from the 400 grand biller to a 800-900 grand biller was she stopped chasing vacancies and she only chased problems.
Yeah.
Right. And like we spoke about her process where the first step is that discovery call. And that's where you're saying, look, yes, I understand you have roles, vacancies, we can talk about them. But first, in order for me to be honest with you and advise where I can help, I need to understand where you're at, how we got here, why is it important you get this person, what happens if you don't get this person, what have you tried so far, what hasn't worked, what has worked. Like, you need to understand.
Yeah, you've got to
that.
stop people talking about the vacancy. Actually, you've got to push back, because the client might want to jump into that, but you've got, you know, we definitely find we want to push back and go, just the other reason we push back is because we've got two different teams of people that they're going to have a conversation with. So they're going to have a discovery call, and then they go on to have a role brief with the recruitment team, and we're really conscious that it can't be telling the same thing twice. So we've got to really separate.
That's
okay, discovery is more strategic. You know, how can we help? And then role brief is, right, okay, tell me about the behaviours and responsibilities in this job.
This podcast is proudly partnered with Vincere, the all-in-one recruitment agency software that over 20,000 recruiters trust daily. We're also partnered with the award-winning OneUp Sales, the sales and motivation platform that enables you to maximize the potential of your teams. We love partnering with both of these organizations because they share our mission in helping you get the most out of your people and your business. You can get exclusive offers because you listen to this podcast and get up to 10% off the usage price forever. Use the link in the show notes to get your hands on that. Let's get back to the episode. All right, I think this will be helpful for people, so I just want to dive into this a little bit.
Okay.
So you've got two people that basically their entire purpose is to bring on new clients.
Yeah.
And the process is they have a sales cadence that they follow that enables them to have the best opportunity, the best chance of booking and discovery calls.
Yeah.
How long is often a discovery call?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. So they're asking for 45 minutes discovery call. And then curious then with what you just said, after that, obviously they're then recommending the solution. Right, whether that be, well, from what I've learnt today, these are the reasons why you should speak to our recruitment team and why they're best positioned to support you with your challenges. Or this, I'm going to introduce you to Abi, who's head of training. From what you said today, this is why I'm doing that.
Yeah.
In between that, on the recruitment side,
because
a lot of people won't have a training division. Like, are you having terms signed in between that?
The BD team agree the terms
in discovery.
Yes, or they will say at the end, so they'll talk through our process, and at the end of the call say, I'm going to send you the terms over, and then they'll have that discussion.
Yeah.
I mean,
they do that in discovery.
Yes.
So I was thinking that because they're not going to have that job briefing if you haven't.
We've learnt the lesson the hard way. We don't go any further than that until we've agreed terms.
Okay. All right. So if I'm listening right now, the often pushback that I've heard from people was, yeah, but like I've got a company that has vacancies that I can start working on.
Yeah.
And I need help with them. Like, am I going to miss out if I say, hey, whoa, wait, let's have a discovery call first, and then we'll talk about the roles. Like, I might miss out.
I'll challenge them on fill rate, right? Because our fill rate, I think, is significantly higher than a lot of other contingent models. You know, we're hoping next year to hit 60% fill rate.
At the moment, it's
45. Yeah.
That's definitely higher than.
Yeah, so it's about the quality, and it's about how you, if you cut corners, you know, that behaviour is mirrored by the client, and you will be treated like a recruiter, not as a partner.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be treated like a recruiter, you know, just to fill this for me. I want to offer a professional service, and that's about taking time to. You know, it's a significant cost for somebody. I don't want to cock it up, so let's do it properly.
So just two final bits then. One, what's the typical what have you found to be the most effective agenda for that discovery call?
So we've done some training recently. So we talk about, we go through success criteria for the business and for their business. We talk very little. We don't really talk about us at all. We'll talk maybe at the end for 1 or 2 minutes. Like what I think is a big change. You know, when I was in-house and had recruiters come to me and they get their bloody deck out, and you're like, I don't really give a shit about your values or your, you know, how good a deck you can put together. You know, like a 20-page deck, like. Come on. So we talk all the steps really are about their business, so the challenges they're facing, what's their vision, what experience they've had before with other recruitment businesses, why they're at that challenging point, talking about then how we might be able to help them, and then I suppose we then create a bit of a sense of urgency with putting a plan in terms of, right, okay, well, this is, if you wanted somebody, if you wanted this in place by then, this would be the reverse engineering, what dates we would need to start. Our process is pretty laid out as well. We know that it takes us between 8 and 10 working days to create a shortlist. We know that on average people have between 4 and 6 weeks notice, so we can pretty much predict when we can. We know that an interview stage takes 2 weeks. Yeah, so that's a really good kind of way of putting that out. And then, you know, we don't hide away from the fact at the end that the client might need to go and do something like write a job description, like, you know, and that's, we then summarise the call and talk about what we need to go and do and what they need to go and do.
Yeah.
Look, we're changing this all the time, but we've learnt this the hard way of getting really excited about a new sexy brand, or and in hospitality that's hard as well, because as a customer you know these brands and you think, oh god, that sounds great, I really want to work with them, and then you realise you've won 4 agencies and they've got a big direct team, and you think actually this is not a great client in terms of the commercials.
So it also helps you to have more clarity on it. Is this a great client for us to work with?
Yeah, we do. We're in the process of the moment of qualifying clients internally, and that's not easy to do without knowing. Yeah, until you started working with them, we don't know how great they're going to be at communication or how shit they're going to be. What we can do is qualify jobs fairly. You know, we can qualify them by location, culture fit, people culture, salary. So we do have a measure of qualifying jobs, and we, as a business, think that we should be spending our time on jobs that score over 7 out of 10.
Say that again. 7 out of 10 as a minimum.
Yeah. We don't always do that, because sometimes that we can fill a 3 out of 10 job and we really want the client, or we've got capacity. So there's lots of different factors at play, but I think having this consultant mindset of, okay, if I need to prioritise my time, I should prioritise it on a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay, no, I appreciate you sharing that. So very much focused about them. And yeah, the reason for that is you're not going to be able to come up with a solution if you're talking most of the time, right? So just on that, what have you found? Because it's something I was looking at, because this is my process as well, discovery call. Again, it's very much about them. I need to understand the problems, why we're here, these things, what we've tried so far, what isn't working. And then from that, I can then say, well, from what I've learned today, these are the reasons why I think it'd be worth our time to like progress to the next step. But what have you found to be like your... what do I want to say? To be fair, actually, I was going to ask you around your like conversion from discovery to then signing, because you've added that extra step.
Yeah.
Do you know that figure, or like that conversion of done a discovery call, they've signed terms, and now they're a new client?
I don't know an exact measure, but I would say the reason we start measuring something when we've got a gut feeling that there's a challenge, and I know it'll be above 90%.
Yeah.
So it's really good. Whether that converts into revenue, sometimes
it's different. Yeah, but I think that's because the reason why I'm asking that is like people might think, oh, that's just like not worth the hassle. I'd rather just go straight into the vacancy, right? So if you're saying majority of the time we'll sign terms, we're not saying that every single time that's going to be 10 out of 10 job, but more often than not, even though we've added that extra step, whereas another recruiter just goes straight in. Abby, tell me about these, general manager jobs. Sounds great. Go into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we are up against that. We're, and that is, especially when we've come down to London, we're up against that more, and it's really hard to trust your process. But I've got to believe that's the right thing to do, because I've got to believe that we want better client relationships and we want better jobs to work on.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, you can showcase that by your process.
Yeah.
I found that if I take you through a sales process and you're impressed, and like you can stand out just by implementing a really solid process. Even before we start working together, I could make your perception of me, wow, these guys are really impressive. What is it going to be like when we start working with each other?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if somebody wants to do it quick and dirty, then maybe they're not the right client for you anyway.
Yeah. So just final bit. I know we're going granted there, but that will be helpful for people. What's the core message around why it's worth your time, Abby, the hiring manager, to give me that 45 minutes? Like, what have you found to be the most effective message?
Because in terms of what I would say to a client.
Yeah, because like we were talking about, particularly now you're focusing in London. Like, Abby, I haven't got time for that. Like, let's just go straight into these jobs. I've got sign off. Like, let's just get into it. I just spoke to these guys down the road. Like, they've told me that they can work on these. I only want to speak with one other agency. Like, let's just get straight into that. And you're going, wait, hang on a minute.
I think it's saying, look, we want to understand that you're right for us and we're right for you. And it's setting it's setting that messaging out that you are equal, that you're both, your time is as valuable as their time. And you want to make sure that if you're going to work in this contingent fashion, that you want to know that they're a decent operator, or that they, operate in a certain way. So although I understand you might not say that, we want to work out whether you're a good client, but that's ultimately what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then passed over to the recruitment team, and then you've got talent consultants that speak to clients, that manage processes, but are then entirely focused on speaking to candidates, getting the shortlist together, presenting them.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, curious then, how many... I don't know, this might not be something you measure. I was going to ask you how
Stop
many...
asking me shit that I don't measure. I measure loads.
Sorry. So, I'm going to ask you about I want to go into the experience, but just final thing.
Okay. 2
people, like how many discovery calls have these people typically... Like, what's ended up being...
In a week, I don't know what their actual target is, but they will have a target. I imagine they're doing between 5 and 10 a week.
Okay, cool, nice. Experience then. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, do measure this.
So I found it so interesting and love the fact that one of the core KPIs is NPS.
Yes.
So obviously you're measuring, and that's a way for you to measure client and candidate experience.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain NPS for people because we use NPS in our business?
Yeah. So we chose to use it because we work in hospitality, and it's a real key indicator It's ultimately the answer to would you recommend us to a
Yeah.
friend, and if you score 9 or 10, you counted. If you're 7 or 8, you're passive. And taken away, and if you're 5 and 6, you're a detractor. So we thought it was a relevant measure because our clients would understand it. We approached it from the fact that we can easily, if we want an ego measure, we can record NPS at placement stage. So we can ask candidates, how did you find us when we found you a great new job? Yeah. And we can ask clients, how did you find us when we found you somebody? But actually, that is not the real way to measure, to measure feedback. And if we're putting so much time and effort and energy into consultant training and development around experience, we need to measure it at different points. So we measure it throughout the candidate journey, whether you get a job with us or not. So as soon as you've been put into any kind of process, you start receiving feedback surveys. And as a client, as soon as you have gone through the discovery and role brief, so before you've ever had a candidate, we start asking you what you think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Love that.
So both our candidate and our client are over 90.
Yeah.
Which we keep going back and going, this can't, and I get people who fill out the survey, it's polarised. You either fill out a survey because you love a service or you hate a service. And I think we do a good job, and we became, we're obsessed about this perception of recruiters and making sure that we're offering, a really valuable service to our clients. And I know it sounds corny, but it is, when you're talking to a candidate, it's the most joy you can get is finding them a job that improves their life and well-being. And we've got a team of people that's what they want to do.
So just to paint a picture then, we've spoken a lot about the client side, so let's just focus on the candidate side for a sec, where oftentimes the experience can be like the ball can be dropped. Yeah. So if I go through a process with you guys, I get registered. I'm talking to you about my experience. You're telling me, you're qualifying me.
I'd never use the term registered.
Okay, sorry, you're qualifying me. You then end up telling me about one of the jobs that you're working on with one of your company, with one of the companies that you're working with, and you then decide to go, you know what, Hisham, I think we'd really like to put you forward to this one. Yeah. So then you put me forward. I then get an interview request. I then have that interview. I then don't get progressed to the next stage. How many times am I going to be asked, would you recommend 68 people to a colleague or a friend?
You've probably been asked 3 times by then, but if you fill it in, you don't get a repeat survey.
So once you filled it in, you don't get asked again? You get
it's survey dependent, so we've got like a cadence of what you wouldn't get asked the same question same survey twice if you filled it in. But just to go back slightly, look, we've until this year, we've actually spent the last 2 years focusing on candidate experience. So candidates approaching us have a discovery call as well. So their discovery call is about career motivators, what's going on with them, a bit about what their experience is, really diagnosing their problem. So when we diagnose their problem, then we can work out whether we've got solutions for them. And I think that is that we're transparent, and sometimes we say to candidates, look, I'm sorry, you're great, but I don't think we've got something for you right now. We're going to we create a 68 locker for you, so we create a space on the system. I mean, it's an ATS where we've got your motivators in there, and if we have anything that comes up, we'll be in touch. So at that point, we've not raised expectations that say we're going to come back to you next week. Yeah. So I think that's the first point. Second point is then, if we're always understanding from our client discovery call what the selling points of that business is, and they've got to match those motivators. So we're kind of diagnosing, right, okay, could this company fit this candidate? So we send them away to look at a role. At that point, we then do what we call a face-to-face. So we would then do like a range of competency-based questions based on what the client's looking for. So they've spent, following that, there's another bit, and I'm convinced that this is like a key differentiator in terms of candidate experience. This interview preparation you know, we're not sending on email your time and you know, who you're meeting. It is kind of really in depth of, right, tell me what you think about, what do you love about this business? So we're doing a bit of mock interviewing, or you know, I think it's coaching people, and I think that does we've got to find a way to set us apart as a candidate service. We've got to give candidates a reason to come back to us and keep using us. And actually, if we're just going to fly them through a process and go, there you go, meet that person, why the hell would they ever come back to us? So we've got to protect that candidate experience and say, look, whether you got a job through us or not, we hope you've had a great experience. And that interview preparation, I think, is really important. We spend around, you might laugh at this, around 2 hours with every candidate before they get to a client.
What, for discovery on average, 2 hours?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but you can't be doing that unless you're, like, what's being... the outcome of that is like positive, net or positive. Yeah. And look, could we make efficiencies there? You know, I challenge you to go and look at our reviews and see whether we should be spending any less than 2 hours. I was going to ask you then. I feel like you've just answered it. I was going to ask you, like, anything. Like, I feel like it's more about. I feel like you would have got to that process that you just described by, like, making slight changes, small processes over time.
Cocking it up, do it again.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to ask you, even though being aware, it's probably a bundle of like small changes over time that's then resulted in that, and then you're sort of maybe happy for it for a period, and it's like, right, what bit can we change there? I was going to ask you, like, what have been some of the like big levers you've pulled that you think has sort of really had an impact on the 90% plus? It seems like you've really taken your interview coaching properly.
Yeah, the definitely interview coaching
piece.
Definitely.
What about not getting a job? I feel like that's where oftentimes the experience can be dropped. Yeah,
so feedback. Look, I think the consultants see that their relationship with the business sees their relationship with the candidate as a kind of lifetime relationship. So that is, they might go through a short process with us, but that's, you know, they're still part of our network, you know, and we see that as that we're trying to grow this big network, and you know, it's not transactional. We don't want a candidate to come in and then go to somebody else. When they're thinking about job hunting, and in hospitality that happens relatively often, you know, we want them to pick up the phone to us. We want them to think, right, I've got a career coach and I've got someone that's my pal that I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to. But then that is a cultural thing about our team, and I think, you know, maybe a separate conversation about how we live our values and say what we do and don't do as an organisation, that makes sure the team can deliver that to candidates. It's how we all act. It's how Charlotte and I behave in the business that will, you know, and how we talk about other people, how we talk about candidates, how we talk about clients. You know, behaviour breeds behaviour, and I think we've got to be so careful that we're living our values, and then the rest of the team will do that via candidate conversations.
Yeah, I want to ask you, like, as you're coming to the end here, like how you, because you're clearly so passionate about what you were just talking about. Yeah. What you believe you both do that really enables that to happen, you know, 90% of the time. But just quickly, I think it's worth highlighting with what some people might be like, oh my God, 2 hours before, like, for every candidate, right? But like I said, there's no way you'll be doing that unless you see like net positive. Personally, I think something that I always remember is someone you should be connected with. Actually, I think you really get along. He recruits in the FMCG space, and again, I remember when he did like a training session with us, we were talking about how to consistently generate candidate referrals. Yeah, and where he's had the most success is making sure the candidate experience is world class for people that don't get a job. Yeah. And some of his biggest customers have come from, Abi didn't get a job at Brewdog that I was in the process of before. However, she then went to Honest Burgers, and she's someone, bring them up again. But anyway, she then went there and was like, Rich didn't help me get a job. However, world class experience. Rich, can you help me at Honest Burgers? I'm assuming you've got a lot of stories like that.
Being honest, we've tried a load of refer a friend, and do we have a load of people that we've paid out the bloody vouchers to? No, but I think actually there's loads of that it's happened without our knowledge, just saying, oh, so-and-so told me to speak to you, so-and-so told me to speak to you. That happens so many times a day to all of us.
Yeah. So, like, for those of you listening, what I take from that is, like you said, it would be really easy to ping out a survey. Abby's got a new job. She's got, some 68 people merch. Like, they've sorted her out, all that. Abby,
Stop
would you
making
recommend
merch.
us to a friend or colleague? Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's the people that aren't, fortunate to get the job. Like, what experience are you creating for those people? Because they could be your biggest detractors and your biggest promoters.
And we don't always get it right.
Yeah.
But it's how you react when you don't get it right. And what we do, we could say, fuck them, they don't know, and actually we don't. We obsess over the ones that we don't get right. And that's what changes process, and that's what changes experience.
So with all of this being so important, that's what I just wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on, is like, as you grow, I know you're very much focused now on getting the most out of your existing people rather than worried about headcount and stuff. But still, there's a lot more. Like, I feel like the stuff that you've spoken about today, people listening are going to feel a lot more confident to be able to roll out, for it to be consistently executed if they have a smaller team, and they can influence it by proximity maybe. Whereas, like, you're probably beyond that now. So what you were talking about, how you talk, how you and Charlotte talk, people talk to me about how you feel like you enable those to be the standards.
Yeah.
Like how they've become the minimum standards. Because there's a lot that you've spoken about, which I can imagine, like you said, you lose sleep over, because it only takes one person to be like, fuck, I'm not gonna do that today. I'm sure Abby won't know. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The likelihood of that happening is more and more.
Yeah, and I think, look, the culture in a business is created by the people operating it, and we're, Charlotte and I are always conscious of that. We've got to do what we said we're going to do, and we've got to live and breathe those values. And we do have, whether people think values are a load of shit or not, they work for us, and when they work for the team get excited about them, we reward them, we talk about them, we highlight them at all our conferences and meetings, and we have little crappy awards for, the value master of the week, and so they're alive, in the business. And we take the piss out of each other. Oh, it's not very expert, is it? One of our values is expert. So they're alive, and I think that you got to recruit the right people who share those in the first place. Yeah. But then, because we're not teaching old dog new tricks, we're not taking people from having bad habits. We're creating habits. So they're learning a totally new skill when they come to us because they're coming from operations. Then that's when we've had real success, whether I should say it or not, when it hasn't worked out when we've taken people from other recruitment businesses, because it's too hard to unpick.
Yeah, I'm not surprised
some of the
by
habits. That. Yeah,
because the people that you're hiring are coming. They've got the hospitality and industry context, but they're coming entirely open-minded with no evidence on how recruitment should be. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's a blank canvas in terms of recruitment. So why would they now do it any other way?
Yeah. How do you? I do understand the probably lead domino to having those standards consistently being met is hiring the right people.
Yes.
It's probably the lead domino. So with you being so, how do you uncover people that align with your values in the interview process? I feel like that's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And you kind of always think, God, how can we cock up recruitment as recruiters? I think you've got to have a really robust process. We part of our process is they have to present for 10 minutes on anything they want, anything they're passionate about.
Ooh.
And that shows loads of, we've had really fun stuff, really weird stuff.
What stage is that at?
Second or third, depending on whether they've met both of us but everything's face to face. And yeah, God, there's so much gut feeling goes into recruitment, isn't there? But hopefully we've also we've had some, proper recruitment training in terms of competency based, right? Okay, do you exhibit these values and talking to people? So we'd probably spend, I might spend an hour with somebody, Charlotte might spend an hour with someone, the team gets involved, and then they present some in 10 minutes on whatever wacky thing they want to present on. But then there's always a bit of gut feeling, right?
Yeah. So what are you going into next year then? you know, you have intentions to keep growing the important business numbers.
We can say revenue.
Revenue. What are you like being laser focused on? Like, what are you and both of you and Charlotte got really top of mind? You said you had a strategy day recently. Like, what are the things that are really top of mind that you're really going to double down on, stay close to?
NPS, client NPS. I feel as though the tables we've spent the last couple of years really focusing on candidates, and I feel as though, you know, I'm sure that's other businesses are finding that now we really need to laser focus down on our client experience and kind of obsess over that for a bit. So client experience and fill rate. Look, fill rate is however you look at fill rate, there's no downside to it. So if you can improve that, like I said before, there's a negative behaviour attached to really pushing a certain KPI, for example, CV send. But with fill rate, there's no negative behaviour.
Yeah, if you really push that, it's only net positive.
Yeah.
So true. That's actually really, that is one of those metrics. That's so true.
Yeah, and so we're going to really focus on that. We're going to, you know, focus on how we negotiate exclusivity, and how we get that fill rate from 45 to 60 without reduction in job number. So
that's the
strat. That took us 9 hours.
9 hours just to walk out with those two things. Job to fill ratio is fair. I love that.
Obviously, there's so many things that affect fill rate.
Yeah.
You know, your consultant training, everything affects fill rate, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But you are right. I think it's a great North Star metric, isn't it?
Yeah. I hope so. And it's weird. It's something that we don't discuss with clients because you sound shit, right? If you only fill 45% of the jobs you get, it sounds shit if you only fill. So it's not really a metric that we'll discuss with clients, but I know that we're significantly better at it than some other businesses that I've taken the metric from. But yeah, it feels like our internal North Star right now.
Yeah, like we've helped some companies, like that's been like a metric that they've really wanted to improve with training.
Yeah.
When we're doing discovery calls and identifying those pains, like for a lot of these people, it's like 15%.
Yeah.
Is their job to fill ratio.
Okay, that makes me feel good.
I mean, that's like we're with like 45 different recruitment companies. I'm not saying that all that, but like quite a few times it's been around 15-20%, and they want to get that up.
From a mental health of your consultant's capacity as well. I mean, look, I'm always conscious that when we fill 45% of our roles, it means we don't fill 55% of them. Yeah. And you can't analyse one without the other. You've got to find out why you're not filling the 55%. And that the mental challenge of doing fucking 55% of your work and it not leading to anything is depressing. I want to level that out for the consultants.
Yeah, but I think also, I know you're saying you may not want to shout from the rooftops that our fill rate's 45%, but if you're communicating if you're able to articulate to potential clients and customers, like, this is the evidence that we've gathered so far as to why the job to fill ratio is normally this. If we implement these things or get really good at this with you, it should actually mean that, 70% of the time we're going to be successful for you. So if you're really thinking about that, you're only going to be able to find things that then you can use that in your process, right? Like, this is why we need to have the discovery call. This is why we do this. This is why this is important to us, because this is the benefit for you. Right?
And it is laying out, back to your challenge about your process. It is laying it out and setting an expectation. Like I keep seeing on LinkedIn, no one cares about your process, and they don't. It's true. I don't think they do, but I think you've got to set expectations and say, we're going to do this. We're going to, we need another 40 minutes of your time to talk about the intricacies of the role. We need, because we know from our measures that is the best possible chance of us filling.
It depends on the framing. Like, no one cares about your process, Abby, if you're talking about your process just because it's your process.
Yeah, and it's a shit process.
Yeah, and I do care about your process if you're saying, listen to, like, this is our process because this is how it benefits you. It's just the framing, right?
Yeah, and it is just on framing. That is, I think as a business, I'm really conscious that we're selfless. So whenever we're talking to a candidate or a client, it's always got to be, we've got to act in their best interest, not our own. And any conversation that we're having, if we start talking about, we need to get that interview in earlier, we need to, this needs to happen, and it's selfish, it's about us wanting to hit a target or a revenue, we fucked it.
Yeah. Abby, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, love the way that you're approaching building your business. Like, I could speak about this a lot. I've really enjoyed that. So hopefully everyone listening, I think there's loads of takeaways there. Definitely things about process, whether that be meeting cadences, discovery calls.
The team will be laughing that I'm coming on to talk about process.
No, I think honestly, there's so many things there, and I think kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing, and like, I just love the way that you're approaching growing your recruitment business. So thank you.
Thank you. What a pleasure. Thanks very much.